It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We continue the jubilation as President Bola Tinubu has conferred national honors on Nigeria's Super Falcons and announced new homes and cash rewards for the entire team following their thrilling WAFCON victory over Morocco. At a grand reception at the presidential villa in Abuja, the president said the team had lifted the nation's spirit at a critical time and praised their courage, discipline and determination. State House correspondent Adeswa Omorowan reports.
Straight from the Moroccan capital, Rabat, to Abuja, Nigeria's Super Falcons returned to the capital today, carrying not just the trophy, but a nation's pride. Arriving at 16:35 p.m. local time to cheers and bouquets of flowers, the team was welcomed by First Lady Oluremi Tinubu and joined by the wife of the Vice President, Nana Shitima, setting the stage for a grand reception at the presidential villa. And then, the nation's thanks delivered by the president himself. President Tinubu, who had followed the team's campaign closely, confessed he almost couldn't bear to watch the finals.
Honestly, I didn't want to watch the match. I didn't want high blood pressure. But people came in and turned my TV on to that channel. When it was 2-0, I got very offended and restless. But I was there still watching. The indomitable spirit of resilience, determination and courage. And after that penalty, and I saw it 2-1, my spirit was lifted. And I believe that of the nation.
In a rousing speech, the president said the Falcons' win was more than a sporting triumph, as it was a moment of national renewal.
You have inspired millions, especially young girls, who now see the proof that their dreams are valid and achievable. You inspired me too.
Then came the announcement of the awards that brought the world to its feet.
On behalf of the grateful nation, I hereby conferred on the players the 11-man technical team with national honor of officer. Additionally, I hereby direct the allocation of 3-bedroom apartments to each of the players and technical crew in our Renew Hope estate. In addition, there is a cash award of the Naira equivalent of $100,000 each to the 24 players. And the equivalent of $50,000 to the 11-man technical team.
The state governors, represented by the governors of Kwara, Kaduna, and Imo states at the event, also announced the separate 10 million naira reward to each player and coach. First Lady Oluremi Tinubu praised the team for showing resilience.
You played with passion, confidence, and an unshakable belief in yourselves that it is not over until it is over.
The Falcons had dubbed their campaign Nation X, and they delivered. Down 2-0 at halftime, they produced one of the most stunning comebacks in WAFCON history. Esther Okoronkwo's penalties packed the turnaround, followed by goals from Folamide, Ijamilusi, and Jennifer Echegini, sealing a 3-2 win.
This 10th title is for you, Mr. President. It is for Nigerians, it is for Super Falcons, and it is for every young child who believes and dreams to be on this stage someday. But Your Excellency, We are not content to rest on our laurels. Our vision is bold. We want to become the best women's football team in the world. We dreamed of standing at the top of the global stage, not just as competitors, but as champions. But to achieve this, we humbly seek the continued and enhanced support of the Nigerian Football Federation, Sport Ministry, and the federal government. With your partnership, we can have world-class training facilities, and we'll be able to prepare in the best way possible and create a pathway for the next generation of Super Falcons to soar even higher.
Nigeria's 10th AFCON title extends their dominance on the continent and preserves a perfect record in finals. Adesoa Omoran, Arise News.
Fantastic, beautiful images. Congratulations to all of us yet again. Now, the Labour Party's presidential candidate in the 2023 general election, Peter Obi, has accused President Bola Tinubu of presenting inaccurate statistics to obscure the country's worsening economic situation. In a post on X, Obi said Tinubu, as candidate of the All Progressives Congress during the last presidential election, once ridiculed his emphasis on data when discussing governance. He said President Tinubu is now overfeeding Nigerians with wrong statistics, from unemployment figures to inflation rates and now GDP rebasing, all to paint a rosy picture of our deteriorating economic and household conditions. However, since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu assumed office, there has been a significant change in the health sector today across northern Nigeria, which was long plagued by maternal mortality and fragile health infrastructure and has seen major reforms. Since taking office, the primary healthcare revitalization agenda became the heartbeat of this transformation. Over 1,100 health centers were already upgraded within the past 2 years, with over 500 of those in northern Nigeria alone. Now, these facilities are not just buildings, but they are gateways to antenatal care, skilled deliveries, immunization, and basic emergency services. According to this report, in the first quarter of 2025 alone, tens of thousands in the region accessed care through these centers, many for the first time in their lives. Now, the report goes further to state that to tackle the North's alarmingly high maternal death rates, the Maternal and Neonatal Mortality Reduction Innovation Initiative was launched. And the federal government has designated 154 health facilities, many of them in the north, to provide free treatment for women with obstetric complications. Now, these facilities will cater to women experiencing health challenges during pregnancy, labor, delivery, or the postpartum period, which could affect the well-being of both mother and baby. So these are just a few changes that prove that the Renewed Hope agenda is not just a blueprint, but a living and breathing paradigm of transformation. Right, let's shift our attention to power, as the federal government may sell the 11 power distribution companies through a reprivatization process. That's if the Electricity Act Amendment Bill 2025, currently before the National Assembly, becomes law. The National Assembly has already initiated a legislative process to enforce sweeping reforms that could see core investors in electricity distribution companies losing their stakes if they fail to improve their investment. The amendment bill, sponsored by Senator Einaya Abaribe Abia South, seeks to overhaul the 2023 Electricity Act by addressing regulatory gaps, as it warned that investors risk losing their stakes through share dilution, receivership, or outright reprivatization if fresh capital is not injected into the sector within 12 months, following years of poor performance and a worsening debt crisis. Now, this clause comes into effect immediately after an assent is granted to the ongoing amendment of the Electricity Act 2023. The bill has passed its second reading and is currently undergoing further legislative action and discussions. So the National Assembly looking for ways to address some of the challenges that are stopping investors from coming into this market. Will it work? Will it not work? Still so many questions.
So a couple of things. I think what Peter Obi is saying, I don't necessarily think government is doing fake statistics, but I think what Peter Obi is talking about is the fact that the rebasing and the change of the parameters at which we get statistics has sort of like painted a picture that, oh, things are better when things are not. And we should say things the way they are. In fact, even the former Statistician General kicked against, or the former two Statistician General, the one that finally went to, I think, one of the top 4 accounting firms, kicked against the new model of measuring unemployment that now makes our unemployment number sits at 5%, which when it was being measured before, it was well over 34%. Yemi Kale, yes. So, and when you also look at that modeling, and they're using that modeling to inflation now, okay, you're changing the base year and all of that. Yes, inflation trickling down, but the month-on-month inflationary numbers are still going up. I was reading in the Vanguard about rice the other day, that because since the import waiver regime is fast trickling out, that the prices are beginning to go up again. With the rebasing, it even shows that the manufacturing sector has shrunk, which is supposed to be a vital part of the economy. So the numbers projected before was 199 billion. Formerly, the economy was well over 300 billion. Even with all the disaster we blamed Buhari for and everything, that he inherited an economy of about 400-500 billion, and he crashed it to about 300 billion. After the devaluation, things even went south. And with high numbers of loans. Anyway, the government has said, okay, look at our, look at our, we're reducing debt service ratio from over 90% of the Buhari government. Look at the fact that most of our loan, look at our loan in dollar, is not really that high. The reason why your loan in dollar is not high is because your currency has been devalued badly. But when you check the threshold, with loans about over 140 trillion, some people projecting a inch up to 200 trillion, and you have a GDP about 350, close to 400 trillion, your loans is getting to half the size of your GDP. During the days of Jonathan, what we're talking about loan to GDP ratio was about 25%, 26, 27%. So we've incurred more loans marginally, according to the percentile, over the years. And these are some of the concerns Peter Obi is raising. So we've tweaked the way we calculate statistics. We've tweaked base year. Statisticians will say, okay, yeah, it's needed to be done. But now the statistics we get does not paint a picture of what will happening. With that opinion piece about the North, and I'll react to it, despite the fact that you have a lot of good stories being reported as regards to what party is doing and the revolutionary work is doing. But this was the same party that said it's just got only 15% given to him to do his capital projects out of the budgetary terms. Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, is reporting that in Katsina, 652 child deaths due to malnutrition. You know what that means? You see the pictures in Gaza of the kids that are very thin due to malnutrition? That's malnutrition. And that's what's happening in Katsina. Not my report. Médecins Sans Frontières. Over 244,000 children in Borno face severe malnutrition, exacerbated by insecurity. The fact that we have lack of aid workers, now that most of the Americans have pulled out their aid packages and all the workers that work in the North and all of that, out-of-pocket expenditure, still a big problem. We're having problem with facility. Yes, the party has revamped some facilities, kudos to him, but we're still having a lot of challenges. So when you have all of this challenge, the question now behoves on this government, how do we solve? We have to have a long-term holistic approach. Number one, identifying what we want to do with the healthcare sector. I'll suggest some ideas. Number one, see how we can revamp the health insurance scheme in such a way that some parts of the premium, apart from the money government sets aside for the healthcare sector, is injected into the primary healthcare, thereby also bolstering the tertiary healthcare and making this teaching institution center of excellence like some party has done, and the federal medical centers, which are supposed to be centers of excellence. Also, look at grassroots methods of trying as much as possible to be able to preach curative health and lifestyle changes to people, and have a proper health extension workers on ground and monitoring and tracking for the ecosystem, which you can put in a bureau across 774 local governments. Also set up databases where you can collect empirical data to be able to plan and project for the healthcare sector. Look for capital injection. Make the priority of the budget be in the healthcare, education, and other social sectors that would improve humanity. Also, look at how to cut waste from health projects, set up accountability levels and an ombudsman levels where every contract given out there can be totally monitored to be able to bolster the healthcare sector and other sectors in the country. By doing this, I think we can coalesce efforts, and there's a whole lot that can be done. And like we said initially, kudos to President Tinubu on those kind gestures. You can see how the girls switch from Nawa Papa to Nawa Mama when they had money, Nawa Mama, and the girls are going to be going home with money. I think the girls should also invest wisely, because that money given to them by the president is enough to set them up for life. And hope we will not have a case where the house pledge will not be redeemed. We remember what happened to the likes of Westerhoff. After winning the Nations Cup, they just got his house pledge redeemed a couple of years ago. We don't want that. I trust in President Tinubu to do even better.
Okay, excellent reception for the Super Falcons, who did all of us proud through their participation in the 14th edition of the West African Cup of Nations for the Women African Cup of Nations, which took place in Morocco, July 5 to 26. Now, the president had encouraged them while they were there, and they didn't disappoint. They themselves went there to say, oh, this will be Mission X, Mission 10, accomplished. They have now won 10 out of the 14 editions of the tournament. I think Equatorial Guinea won in 2008 and 2012. South Africa won in 2022. But Nigeria has taken the trophy at other times. It wasn't easy, but the girls showed determination, focus, defiance, and they've been able to achieve this celebratory moment for Nigeria. And the reception by the president is perfectly remarkable and in order. The president, apart from ensuring that their allowances and bonuses were paid while they were in Morocco, has now gifted them, by way of appreciation, a 3-bedroom flat in Abuja for the 24 players and the 11 technical members of the crew, the national honor of the Order of the Niger for both technical crew and the 24 players, and also $100,000 in cash naira equivalent for the 11 players, which will be about 153 million per person. And then, of course, $50,000 for the 11 members of the technical crew. This has been very generous, and it's commendable because these are patriots. These are persons who have done us proud. My only concern is that, okay, this is the 10th trophy that we have won. What now happens to the other persons who won in the past? The people who won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to this number 10, who are not part of this triumphant Trophy 10 crowd. Take, for example, Anchie Ejine, and there are others. And they were not well compensated by other administrations. Is it possible to involve them also in this largesse from the Nigerian government, and then also to prevent the situation we had in the past, whereby promises were made and the promises were not delivered? The renewed housing project that President Tinubu talked about is already existing. And I think that the FCTA should just go ahead immediately and allocate those apartments. And also make sure that the $100,000 cash equivalent in naira is made available to these young patriotic ladies. The Nigerian Governors Forum has also given them 10 million naira. 6 Super Eagles, former Super Eagles players, including William Troost Ekong and others, are also giving them 1 million naira each, which means per player, this will be about 24 million coming from William Troost Ekong, Olaina, Ademola Lukman, Joseph Aribo, Alexi Wobi, Balogun too is donating. So it's an appreciative nation, and I think it's very good. It's good for the psyche. And I hope that the Super Eagles, the male team, who are always lagging behind, will learn a lesson from this. And make sure they do not disappoint us during the World Cup qualifying series, now that the qualifying series in Group C will commence again beginning September 6. Now, as for the issue about the discourse, now the thing about the discourse is that there are two sides to it. There is a political side. When the APC government took over in 2015, one of the things they started saying was that, they were going to do something about the privatization process by the PDP government of President Jonathan. They didn't know what was done with the investors. That in itself provided a foundation for the failure subsequently of those discourse. Now, to such an extent that as we sit now, about 8 of those discourse have already failed. They have collapsed. About 3 that are still surviving. I think Ikeja Disco is still surviving, but about 2 others are already working out a deal to be bought. It's just that those deals have not survived. So the business model, the industry model that was put in place by the Jonathan administration has been politicized, and also government has not fulfilled its own commitment. Now, this discourse, if they say they are going to sell them to new investors, there will be issues. In the past, there used to be talk about legal issues and all of that, but even the owners of the discourse will seem to have become tired of the rigmarole, back and forth, politics and all of that. But the issue is, what are we going to do about transmission? What are we going to do about the value chain? The Enugu Electricity Regulatory Commission says that we now have a new regime put in place by the Electricity Act of 2023, which gives powers to the states to cover the entire value chain. That in itself disoriented the existing framework that was put in place, before 2015. So there is something to be done about it, but I hope that the APC government will not repeat the same errors, having changed the business model, having changed the industry model. However, what is important to us as long-suffering Nigerians is to be sure that this country of over 200 million people can provide more than the 5,000, 4,000 megawatts that we have at the moment, making electricity a major problem. The second thing is that the world is going in the direction of solar. China, for example, has developed models for solar energy. So you are likely to have in Nigeria also, in due course, if we follow the global trend, propelled by China, that in fact, discourse may not be a very profitable business again. So there are changes in that sector about business model, about industry model. Finally, a comment on Peter Obi. Now, Peter Obi says they are just using statistics to give the impression of economic growth. Well, if you look at it, Peter Obi is not the only person saying so. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, speaking through his Director General, Mr. Segun Kadi Ajayi, issued a statement in which he said, yes, okay, the MBS may have done well to do this statistical rebasing and all of that. What they do with GDP rebasing is to reflect the current reality. But the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is saying, we have to do something about the industrial sector. And I assume that this is more or less the same thing that Mr. Peter Obi is saying. That where is real productivity? The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is recommending not industrial growth of about 1.9%, so that there will be real activity. Take the textile sector. Textile. Let's use one example. Once upon a time in this country, Nigeria used to have a thriving textile sector, whether it's in Kaduna or it is in Ilupeju. It's not working again. As chairman of the editorial board of the Guardian, I used to stand in front of that Isolo Road. At 5 p.m., you will see trucks bringing people from the factories. All the factories have been turned into night vigil arenas, churches. People like you here, always going to night vigils. You people have taken over the factories. This is the point that is being made, that, okay, statistical rebasing is not about statistics. It should be about the people. Well, Sunday Dare came out, and then, when Kwankwaso said there's no development in the North, special advisor to the president, he said, look, there are 43 major projects in the North. Minister of Works, David Umahi, also provided evidence that a lot is being done. I think the bottom line of it, whether it's Peter Obi speaking or Kwankwanso speaking, you may dismiss those ones and say, oh, they are talking politics, but they are opposition politicians, is that the government of Nigeria needs to invest more in the social infrastructure of this country for the benefit of the people. That, I think, is the basic point that is being made, and you cannot argue with that, in my view.
Absolutely. I think we also need to have a big discussion about statistics as a whole, and if I may call it the colonization or the indoctrination of statistics. We ask ourselves, these parameters that have become the global norms, do they really reflect our realities as they are lived? I'm glad that here in Nigeria we've come up with the Jollof Index, for example. That is something that's organic and that can very easily relate to our realities here. But sometimes the manner in which some of these conventional statistical exercises for economic indices are conducted may not really hit home with regards to the realities on the ground for developing nations, countries such as Nigeria, for example. So whereas I respectfully beg to differ with Peter Obi in his tweet where he says that there are wrong figures being shared, I don't think the figures in circulation are flattering in any way to any government at all. If you look at double-digit inflation rates, if you look at the GDP rebasing and the size of the Nigerian economy as it is set now compared to where we're coming from, if you look at even the unemployment figures, you can't look at them in a silo. You have to look at them in the context of what unemployment means in that country. The figures are very far from flattering. So whereas I do appreciate the fact that there's a disconnect between the felt economy, as it's often called, and the statistical figures that we use that have become the global norm as parameters. Again, all these go back to, unfortunately, institutions that were not created with countries like ours in mind. So maybe this is a moment, a challenge for economics who specialize in developmental economics to do more with regards to coming up with indices that accurately reflect our realities in our felt economies in developing nations and in African nations, something similar to the Jollof Index, for example. And if we can replicate that in other areas so that we have a true measure, yes, all these other statistics are important for a global conversation, no doubt, but it's important for us to have a very important conversation, eye to eye, as Nigerians and as Africans, where we are able to determine that, okay, this is our truth, and this is the true measure of how we can move forward from these numbers to genuine numbers. For example, I always comment on per capita GDP figures, which I always say that they don't reflect, it's an average. You can't use an average number to analyze a country like Nigeria when you look at the complexity of the realities. It's not one average. You can't just divide by the population because the differences in our lived realities are so massive, as are in other developing economies, in your Brazils, your South Africas, and so forth. So I think in India as well, I think is another good example of that. So I think it's important for us to also ensure that independently we invest more in these other parameters of measuring the performance of our economy. Now, of course, I'll spend some time speaking on the Queens of Africa, who I think were given a very befitting welcome yesterday, and we do thank the current administration for ensuring that the red carpet was rolled out and all the bells and whistles were taken care of. Some of the things that came to mind for me is when I thought back to the 18th century, to the origins of the word morale. Because morale came at a time, it came in the context of a military context, of a military word. Because at that time, soldiers were regarded as machines. This is around the time, just before Napoleon Bonaparte. But when the ideas of the Enlightenment thinkers started coming in, they realized that soldiers are not machines, but they're human beings who have feelings, who have moods, and so forth. And they felt that morale is something that should encompass encompass spirit, will, and unity. And I think I tell the story because I think it's so befitting for the Super Falcons, because if you hear several other anecdotes of their story and their journey, so many challenges, we hear stories about training kits that didn't make it to them. And unfortunately, this is the Nigerian story, often for many of our athletes who go there with the heart, the will, the grit, the desire to win. But often the odds are stacked up against them. So we thank them for their morale. And now, given the welcome that they've received and the pledges that have been made to them, my appeal this morning is to all those who have made these commitments: do not make these girls regret choosing the Nigerian jersey. Because we have, historically, there are so many stories, whether it be the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, in every decade, you can count the number of athletes who have had commitments made to them, many of which have had to fight to be able to redeem them. I have it on good authority that our Mama Bidis has carried this issue on her head, and she's decided she's going to ensure that everything will be paid in good time, but we'll be here to hold everybody accountable until the very last moment, and until every single one of the 24 players and 11 members of the technical team receive all that has been promised to them, because they do truly deserve it, and we do thank them for inspiring us in this time filled with hardship. And as Dr. Abati would call it, pandemic of empty pockets. We thank them for filling our hearts with pride.